up everyone! So, continuing the Venice Film Festival coverage, today's movie I'm going to be discussing on the channel is the latest film from Sofia Coppola called Priscilla, which is a biopic about Priscilla Presley, who was famously married to the singer Elvis Presley. We're actually still pretty fresh off a recent biopic about Elvis himself, given to us last year by Baz Luhrmann and brought to life by Austin Butler. That film was very Baz. It was flashy, extravagant, over the top, very maximalist, and it packed a lot in about Elvis and his childhood, his early beginnings as a musician, his relationship to his manager, the Colonel, played by Tom Hanks, and of course his career as an actor and a singer. But one detail that was mostly sidelined for that film was his marriage to Priscilla, played in that film by Olivia Deon. She didn't have much to do in that film. Now, granted, it was an Elvis film, but she was such a huge part of his life, and her character in that film kind of felt like an afterthought. Sofia Coppola's film attempts to tell Priscilla's side of the story in a very delicate and sensitive manner. It's a bit redundant to compare these two films together because they're very different in style, tone, and also thematically. But because the films have come out so close together, only a year apart, of course people are naturally going to compare the two films. This film, Priscilla, is actually produced by Priscilla Presley herself and is based off her own memoir, Elvis and Me. So it's a real inside scoop on her perspective, and she's brought to life in this film by Kaylee Spaney, and Jacob Elordi plays Elvis. As most people already know, there was quite an age gap between Priscilla and Elvis. He was 10 years older than her, and they met in Germany in 1959 when Elvis was stationed there for military service. They met at a house party, and Priscilla was only 14 at the time. Priscilla herself said in the Venice press conference that Elvis was always very respectful of her, and they never had sex while she was underage. Coppola goes to great lengths to show that their relationship was established on a foundation of companionship, a mutual homesickness for America, and love. Our first introduction to Elvis is through the point of view of Priscilla, and of course he's painted to be a caring and respectful gentleman. But while Elvis was, and still to this day is, beloved by millions, he was still human. We often do put stars on pedestals, and few stars possess the showmanship that Elvis Presley did. And while Baz Luhrmann decided to put a lot of emphasis on Elvis the performer, Coppola decides to pay more attention to Elvis, the man and partner, than the showman. In fact, you'll notice as you're watching the film that there is a clear lack of Elvis's music in the soundtrack, and that's because the Presley estate didn't approve of this film because it doesn't paint Elvis in the nicest light. Now, let me stress this. Coppola isn't trying to assassinate Elvis's character or cancel Elvis. She's merely just pointing out that behind all the glitz and glam, he was just like any other person, flawed, messy, and imperfect. And the person who bore witness to that the most was Priscilla. Priscilla has stated that Elvis was the love of her life, but in many ways, Elvis was very controlling of her. There's a great scene where Elvis takes Priscilla out shopping, and what would normally be like a cute montage in a romantic biopic is something a little bit more darker from Coppola's perspective. Elvis helped manufacture Priscilla's style, from her clothes to the jet black hair to the eyeliner. But was she convinced by him or coerced by him? The line's a bit blurry in this scene. He harshly criticizes her when she dares to explore printed patterns rather than the block colors that he approves of. If it wasn't to his taste, then he would let her know. This is where Coppola starts planting the seeds of his manipulative behavior. Later on, we see more of this possessive behavior from him. He stops Priscilla from getting a job because he just wants her to be there for him after he's done with his work. He says to her, well, it's either career or me, baby. Certainly a bit of a toxic ultimatum. He even expects her to share the exact worldviews and philosophies that he does. He even lightly threatens her, saying that there are so many women around the world that would kill to share his beliefs. And when she reaches a breaking point and calls him out on all these rumors surrounding extramarital affairs, like these rumors about Anne Margaret in the tabloids, he gaslights her and says that she's in the wrong and threatens to throw her out of the house. And while there's never any actual violent exchanges between them, often Priscilla is in the room when there are violent outbursts from him. Really, this whole film is more of a portrait of an abusive relationship than it is a biopic. So yeah, I do admire this film, but I did have a few problems with it. There's certain bits in this film which didn't feel fully realized, like Priscilla's handgun collection, and There's a sequence where they're taking LSD on sugar cubes, and while these scenes are interesting, it never really feels like Coppola justifies their inclusion in the story. Also, there were times where it did feel like Coppola's hands were tied as a storyteller. Nowhere is that more obvious in the lack of Elvis music. Shall we talk about its Oscars chances? Because I am quite interested to see how Priscilla is going to play out over award season. Because when I came out of the film, I didn't have that immediate feeling like this is going to be a major player over award season. But in the time that I've had to sit and digest this film, I've been thinking it might be more of an awards contender than I initially thought. Either it takes off and becomes a major player, or the initial hype fizzles out and we kind of forget about it. And honestly, I can see it going either way. But what really helps Priscilla is that it is an A24 film, and they're in a position where they can actually campaign over award seasons. So they have a big advantage there in terms of like being able to screen it and promote it. Kaylee Spaney also won the Best Actress Volpe Cup at Venice, so she is definitely in contention to be in Best Actress this year. Now, I'm going to be honest here. I personally wasn't blown away by Kaylee Spaney's performance. This performance is fine. I didn't think it was bad. I thought she did a lovely job, but did she take the part and make it her own? Like, could no one else have done a better job than her? There probably would have been some other actresses that could have gotten me to a point where I cried for her, and I sadly didn't cry for Kaylee Spaney. So yeah, when I left the cinema, I didn't immediately think she was going to win the Best Actress Volpe Cup, and I didn't have that knee-jerk feeling that, oh, she's going to be one of our 5 contenders for the Best Actress Oscar. So at the moment, I don't have her in my 5, but I'm not counting her out. I'm not seeing what all the fuss is about. And I feel like a jerk for saying that because I don't like to disparage on a perfectly decent performance from an actor. It's just, I personally didn't see it as Oscar-worthy at all. And like I always say, it's just one bloke's opinion, okay? There are plenty of people out there that really love this performance. As for Jacob Elordi, he's really good in this as Elvis. He gets the voice and the physicality right. But I do think he's going to struggle to place this award season because we're hot off a Elvis campaign from last year with Austin Butler, and it's just probably going to be like, oh, well, we've already seen an Elvis performance. Like, it's just more of the same. What else is new? So yeah, I would be surprised if Jacob Elordi gets any traction with this performance. I could potentially see a costume nomination for Stacey Patat, and I think Felipe Lasorda will at least be in the conversation for his delicate and soft cinematography. As for Coppola, I don't see her getting into Best Director. She might have a shot at Best Adapted Screenplay, but again, it is a very crowded category this year for Best Adapted Screenplay, so she might struggle there. But yeah, at the moment, I think she's more likely to get a nomination for writing than she would be for directing. Now, as for Best Picture, I'm honestly not all that sure. Like, last year, in the early days, I didn't think Elvis was going to get a Best Picture nomination, and it did. In fact, it did very well. It got 8 nominations in total. Are the Academy going to be as kind to Priscilla as they were to Elvis? Again, I understand the desire to compare the films together, but it really is apples and oranges, okay? This is a much more delicate and sensitive approach to the story as compared to Baz Luhrmann's razzmatazz showstopper film. So yeah, I'm honestly not sure. My gut feeling when I left the cinema was no, but A24 can campaign for their films, so I can see it getting in. I currently don't have it in my predicted 10, but let's see how the race goes. So let's ask them 3 questions. Firstly, would I watch it again? Yes. Even though I was lukewarm on this film when I came out, there is still a lot about it that I do appreciate and respect. I do think it's a film I need a second viewing of to absorb it a little bit more. Question 2, do I recommend it for you guys? I'm gonna say yes. It's a nice change of pace from a usual biopic, and even though I wasn't blown away by it, I still think a lot of people will like it. So yeah, if you do have some curiosity for this film or the story, yeah, I'd say go check it out. And third question, what score to give it out of 10? It's a weird one for me because I left this film neither disliking it or loving it. I'm somewhere in the middle. There's a lot about it that I respect, but I came out of it still feeling largely unaffected by it, emotionally. I really do appreciate Coppola's honest approach in how she portrays the relationship between Priscilla and Elvis, but I still had difficulty clicking with this film. And I think that's because the film is supposed to be about Priscilla finding herself and her voice, but there's kind of an issue in the fact that she's mostly a passive spectator in her own story. Like, most of her decisions in this film are made either by her parents or Elvis. And I get that the film is illustrating that Priscilla didn't really have a whole lot of agency back then, but when the film wraps up and she's leaving Elvis and Graceland and taking charge of her own life, this scene is shooting for catharsis, but it didn't quite work for me. Like, catharsis has to be earned, and this feels like it's kind of forcing the catharsis on you. Yeah, while I did like this film, I still had some problems with it, and that's okay. So yeah, but in terms of score, I've just rambled on here, I'm gonna give Priscilla a score of 6.5 out of 10. But as always, guys, it's just one bloke's opinion. I do want to hear from you. Are you excited for Priscilla? If you've seen it, what did you think of it? How many Oscar nominations do you think it's gonna get? Is Kaylee Spaney worthy of a Best Actress nomination? Whatever you have to say about this film, please do let me know in that comment section down below. If you guys want more movie, TV, and Oscars-related content, don't forget to click subscribe. And as always, thank you so much for watching, guys. For more things related to movies, TV, the Oscars, and popcorn culture, I'm Luke Harefield, and I'll see you next time.